Have Emily go ahead and start the recording. So we want to welcome you all. I see some familiar faces and some people that maybe I've not got a chance to meet or know too much about your program, but we just want to welcome you to our fingerprint meeting. So this really is a meeting. We're going to go over some housekeeping things and stuff and kind of get into the meat of it. As we think about, you guys are probably definitely getting very versed in Zoom and virtual, but like I said, we're going to record this meeting and we'll share this out in the future. Okay, so it could be in a day or two, but we will get out the link for you to review this and watch. And then our hopes is that we can share that with other programs too in the future. We'd like you to mute yourself right now. And again, I didn't put this in there, but sometime with technology, we don't have to see your screen for this because it really is a meeting. So if that helps you with technology, feel free to do that. It's up to you. As you need to, though, if you have questions, this is really informal too. We have kind of an agenda that we'll go through. If you have a question, feel free, or a thought, feel free to unmute, or you can maybe use the Zoom tools, raise your hand, and we'll try to watch for that. You can also type in any questions or thoughts into the chat. So that's a way that we'll kind of facilitate this. And Emily too is going to be helping us out with all this technology. Emily is one of our new CCR&R staff. So she is our data specialist and is a tech whiz, as I say right now. So she's going to help. So if you do have any technical things, you could reach out to her privately or maybe just get on and off. So I think most of you are pretty familiar with some of this stuff, but if not, just let us know how we can help you. And as we move on, again, we'll go over the meat of it, but feel free to stop us, ask a question. This is really informal, okay? This is really time for you guys too. So a couple of things we just wanted to reiterate is really, again, we are not certified trainers in doing fingerprinting. So we just wanna make that kind of disclosure. And we're not here to officially train you, but we're going to provide you some information and resources so that maybe you can move to feel comfortable doing this. Okay, so one suggestion could be too is you might have a parent or somebody that is in the police force or a sheriff or something that is a little bit more versed. If you want more training, maybe that's something you could seek out. But I would say that most of our consultants that have done it at CCR&R have just been hands-on. They've watched some videos and just practice. So, and there's a lot of our CCR&R consultants on here today that are going to share some tips with you, or any of the other consultants that are on, feel free to jump in with anything that you think would be helpful. So the other thing is we have our website, so we just want to make sure there's tons of information on there that you know about that. But if you're not sure if you're needing support, you can always email me back. But again, I would start with your local consultant. So if you're not sure who that is, let us know and we'll make sure to connect with your local consultant. Okay, so you know who that is. They're a great resource. And then the last thing too is the funds for some of the supplies that you got were provided by the Department of Human Services and support through CCR&R. So we just want to acknowledge that and it's great to have partners that can help support with some of these costs for you. So we're going to go on. Does anybody have any questions before we get started or any needs? Not seeing any. Okay, we're going to continue. So as we look at our agenda, here's kind of our goals and what we're going to accomplish today is we're going to look and just briefly talk about the benefits, why, of implementing fingerprinting internally. So you guys as center directors or staff, what's the benefits of that? So we're going to give you some perspectives. We're going to review the items in the kit, or as we say kit, the supplies you got, and tips for using them and where we ordered them. So we'll talk about that throughout this meeting. We're going to view a couple videos on rolling fingerprinting, and the videos that we're going to view, 2 of them were in the resources that we provided. So those are links that you can go back to and watch those videos. There might even be more out there. We just picked these 2. We're going to practice rolling some prints with guidance. We'll see how that works. Our plan is to watch the videos and then we'll watch one of them again and just kind of practice. So it might be you just practicing, where you're at, using your own fingers, but just to kind of you know, what we say, what we see, and then you're going to feel it. So we're going to do that once. And then we'll talk about maybe any additional tips or hints or things from any of the other consultants. And then we'll all through that questions. If you have questions, again, just ask. And then we'll go over some of the new information from DHS, some of the new great information about the no cost to fingerprinting that you guys were having to pay before. So Terry's going to allude to that and some of the resources as you think about, you know, background checks and fingerprinting. So that resource, and then we're just going to open it up for more questions. So that's kind of our agenda today. And then again, we'll have this accessible for you guys to access in the future. So you might not be doing prints for a month or two. Maybe you could go back to this meeting, pull it up, watch some of that, familiarize yourself. So that'll be a resource for you. So that's our goals and agenda. So as we think about goals and benefits, some of the things that we've heard from programs that are started to do this, you know, the cost savings. So the time and, you know, saving of money, possibly sending your staff to get their prints rolled somewhere. So a lot of times the police station or sheriffs or whoever could cost $20, $25. You know, the time that maybe it might cost you even to send the staff there if that's part of your process. So cost saving with that, time saving too is you guys can really control when this gets done. Okay. A lot of times you would have to maybe wait for an appointment for us. And right now still CCR&R is not doing fingerprinting at this time. But as we think about that is you could have control of if you need to hire some staff and you need to get going, then you could get those prints rolled and then your information sent in. So kind of that control and how long that process might take. And again, more control over the whole process with this. And then the other thing is we found and heard from people too, is a comfortable environment. It is pretty intimidating to go down to the sheriff or the police station sometime to get fingerprints. A lot of your staff maybe have never had to do that before. So just a comfortable environment. So that could be another benefit. You guys might also see other benefits, but those are a couple that we wanted to highlight that we've heard from other programs. Okay. So as we go on, I'm going to have Shannon kind of talk. I'm going to flip through a couple of slides. Shannon Hames is our Blackhawk Child Care consultant, one of them, and she's just going to kind of go through a few of the supplies that were given and maybe a couple pictures of what they've used in the Blackhawk office.
Good afternoon, everyone. In the fingerprint kit that we dropped off at the centers, you would have had a clear like shoebox tote, which you can use to keep the supplies in. You can keep extra pens, cards, the card holder, the ink, utilize it however you wish. You'll see on the pictures here, you would have received a card holder and an ink pad. The ink pad does come with a cardboard piece over it. I suggest keeping that on there. Just it helps keep the ink fresh and kind of protects it. And you also got in that kit is a piece of like a rubber backing, which you can lay out on a countertop and you can put the card holder on there and the ink pad. It just keeps it from slipping. Because some of you, I don't know how you're going to be able to utilize it or where you're going to put it. But countertop height works the best, but it can be done on something smaller. We have done it in many different places. As you can see in the picture here, the one we have in our office, it came on that big, I guess it's not a board, but
Bar.
Bar, yes, that's it. And we have it just taped down with packing tape. So if you could purchase something like that, or maybe even get a piece of nice wood that you could screw the ink pad and the card holder to, and then you could find a spot that maybe you could make it permanent. And that might not work either, having it permanent. You might need to move it to have access in different places, depending on your location, how big of an area you have in that. And I think that's kind of it for that part, unless anybody has any questions.
And I guess I wanted to point out how you guys, the packing tape has just worked really good and you could undo it. So again, you know, you've had a countertop height that's worked really well, but it doesn't have to be that. And I think you alluded to that you've done it in different types of tables and things. And so you've made it work. Some people might have space to dedicate to that. Others probably will not. And you might get out your stuff and then you'll go about your business. But we wanted just to show you some of those examples. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Or does that kind of make sense? Okay. Okay. We'll continue to go on. So the next thing we're going to talk about, Kerry Jones, another childcare consultant, she is going to kind of go over that tip sheet that we got. So if you want to grab that out, she's going to highlight some of that. We're not going to go over it word by word, but we're going to kind of highlight some of the tips. She's going to break that down for us. And Emily's going to share her screen and we're going to pull that up too for people and we'll have that up too. So I'll have Kerry go ahead and share her information.
Perfect. All right. So you see, so Emily pulled up the tips sheet that was in, I think they came in an envelope or something in your packet. Anyway, in your bag. So basically, I'm just going to go over just the main things that we kind of want you to know that are important in having readable fingerprints, essentially fingerprints that will pass for review. So first and foremost, on the fingerprint card, at the top of it, there are sections that you as the person rolling or whoever's rolling the fingerprints and the person that is having their fingerprints rolled will need to fill out some of the sections that has to be done in black ink. Black ink only. Because the boxes are kind of small and things like that, try and using just a regular ballpoint pen, none of these fancy gel pens and things, because then it smears and then nobody can read it. So black, plain, nice, simple black ink. We do kind of recommend doing 2 cards for each person. That way, if something comes back as not readable or not, they can't process it, then you've already got one done and you can send another one. And or if you don't have to use both of them, you can keep it and use it the next time around in 4 years because their fingerprints don't change. Washing and drying their hands. Dry their hands very well. If their fingers are wet, they will, the ink won't stick very well or connect with their finger very well, and you'll get goofy prints. As far as where, as Shannon alluded to this a little bit, the surface that you have your fingerprint holder on, card holder on, waist high is ideal, especially waist high for the person you're rolling if possible. That just gives, that way they're not trying to hold their arm up, or you're able to, should be able to stand at the level that you are rolling prints. Another couple tips as far as when it comes to actually rolling the prints, you're gonna do each finger individually. You're gonna roll one finger on a finger or thumb on the ink pad. When you're rolling on the ink pad, you can roll back and forth. You can move your finger any which way you want on the ink pad. When you go to put it on the card, you go from one side of the finger, roll to the other and off the page. Do not roll back, do not tip the finger up, those types of things. Just when you're rolling onto the card, it's just one smooth motion. Sorry, I keep looking away. I'm watching myself roll my finger on the table. So anyway, so that's one of the big things that'll reduce smudging and lifting. So you roll from one side to the other. This tip sheet says nail to nail. So what they mean by that is from one side of your fingernail, and then you're gonna, so this is the paper, you're gonna roll from one side of your fingernail to the other and then lift it right off the page. Don't don't drag your finger off, just make sure they just lift it right off the page, and that'll reduce smudging as well. At the bottom of the card, where you'll do all four fingers together, that is just a push down on the ink pad and lift up, and then press down on the card and lift up. One hand and then the thumbs one at a time. Making sure that the fingerprint itself should look, and you can see on the third page of this, I guess it has some examples of what it should look like. So that the bottom of the third page where it shows the just the box with the single print, you can see how it should be either a square. Yep, thanks, Emily. Yep. So that single box right there, so that where it's almost a square shape, sometimes it'll be a little bit of a rectangle. It should look like that, as opposed to what I think of like a preschool print. It's not an R project fingerprint. It's a FBI fingerprint. That's what I think of. So I don't think. Last tip, I guess, when you're rolling on the ink pad, make sure you get ink down to the first knuckle of each finger, because sometimes, so you can see on that example there, how sometimes they get like the whole finger pad and then a little bit even past the first knuckle. That's okay, because sometimes the shape of the fingerprint sits really low on the pad of your finger. So you want to make sure you get ink all the way down to that first knuckle and that it gets rolled in the box, because that way you for sure get the whole shape. I think that's all I've got. Does anybody else have, any other consultants have any tips they want to, that I forgot?
I just wanted to point out the thumb prints on the bottom of the page. If you'll notice on the fingerprints, those thumbprints are kind of out of the square. Make sure those are centered, because that would be rejected. Just so you know, make sure it's centered in the section for the thumbprints.
That's a good point. And you may have, if you have someone with larger fingers, or you'd be surprised, you can fit a pretty decent sized thumb in there. Just like Becky was saying, make sure it's pretty centered over that before you press down, and then it should fit okay in there. That's making sure it's centered before you press to the paper. The other tip real quick on that bottom section of the card, when you're doing all four fingers, sometimes you have to go at a little bit of an angle to make sure that whole pad of the pinky is on the page. Nothing's worse than pressing down and realizing that half the pinky's missing. So sometimes you have to turn your hand just like at a 45-degree angle to get all of the fingertips in there. So I think that's all I got on. Sarah, you're muted.
Thanks. Anybody else want to share any tips, consultants that are on, or directors or staff, center staff, any questions around some of the tips that we've shared so far, or thoughts around that?
I do have something to add to that too, Sarah. As far as a tip, you will have to figure out too what's most comfortable for you. Now, when I would roll fingerprints, it was most comfortable for me to have the person to my right. So in some are the opposite, or some would switch sides. So you have to just kind of figure out where you're the most comfortable to be able to roll those fingerprints, and then to get that person to relax as well.
Okay. Good point.
Another tip, it says in your tip sheet to have the person look away. It's hard to give up control of your hands. So sometimes having a conversation about something that's completely irrelevant to rolling fingerprints, just to get them to not think about what we're doing with their hands. So it just kind of helps.
Mhm. Okay. Good points. Okay, if we think of any other tips, just jump in. We can share those. One thing I guess I was going to say that I know our consultants have shared, that they've had some rejected. It's okay. It happens. You know, we're not perfect. That's where Kerry's saying having the second card that you could send in, you know, or consultants. I don't know if you've ever felt like, okay, you've looked at it and it's like, no, that doesn't look good. You're here. Let's do it, you know, do it again. Or, you know, maybe on that first set of cards. So I just want to just really stress that it just takes practice, but you're still not perfect all the time. And then some people, my consultants, would you say that some people's fingerprints are just hard, and sometimes even though you print them, they could still be, I don't want to call them ineligible, that's not right, but just might not work, and no matter what you do, that's going to come back? Can anybody speak to that real quick?
Yeah, and it mentions a little bit in the tip sheet, I guess, about like those that have, where you guys are using disinfectants and bleach and things. Sometimes that can wear, it doesn't really erase your fingerprints. It wears down the ridges, so they aren't, so the ridges on your finger that go around the shape don't stand up. They aren't as plump. Or if people's hands are really dry, sometimes it can be tricky to get a good print. Just doing your best with that. After
I don't know, Kerry, if you're freezing up, you might be freezing up. Okay, we'll just keep going on. I'm not sure. There you go. Hey, Kerry, you were freezing up. Sorry, we lost part of what you were saying.
Sorry.
We got the plumb part when you're talking about the
yeah.
ridges.
Okay. Oh, okay. Hold on 2 seconds. So yeah. So anyway, so the if there is, once two cards have been, if both cards are rejected, then they'll send another request just for that person's name and social security number or something. They haven't, there's just a simple form they have them fill out and then send it back.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it seems counterintuitive when the fingerprint pads and the ridges have been worn down. You would think you'd want to push harder when you're rolling prints, but sometimes you need to push, you don't need to push at all. Just light touch will bring out the ridges. When you push too hard, then it squishes the ridges. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So you'll get a smudged print. So a lighter touch when your fingerprints are hard to get.
Okay, good tips. We'll move on to the videos, but again, if anybody has any questions, oh, somebody said that, yeah, they had to write in a missing digit for an employee who lost a finger. Yes, that could happen. And there are some directions on that. So again, too, reach out to us as you guys are starting this, or even, you know, doing it more. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll answer what we can. Can you guys all see the video slide now? We'll go ahead and play that. Okay, we're going to show you just a short video. It's about 4 minutes. And honestly, you guys, we pick these videos, focus on the process. Okay, we're really just looking at the process of the fingerprinting. Okay, so we'll go ahead and watch this one. Go ahead, you know, take any notes you can. This is the one we'll watch a second time in practice, and it is on your link stuff, so you guys could watch it yourself. So we'll go ahead and start that. I'm gonna just fast forward just a little bit till we get to the part we need.
You should prep the station. Set the card so the first row of boxes are available. These boxes should be for the right hand. When fingerprinting, always begin with the right hand, starting with the thumb. It's important to remember that the subject doesn't help at all, and the practitioner moves the subject's hands for them to ensure even prints. When printing, thumbs always roll towards the body from the point of most to least resistance. This is repeated on the card. When rolling fingers, however, roll them away from the body. exactly opposite of the thumbs. The practitioner must take the prints carefully for each finger. The utmost detail must be able to be seen for the optimum identification. Try to get the least amount of smudges by moving at a steady pace with an even amount of pressure. Make sure that between hands, the subject has time to clean their fingers. This keeps the workplace, as well as the subject, clean. Now, while these two move on to the left hand, I'm going to take some time to explain the little details of fingerprinting to you. As I said earlier, fingerprints all rely on a print's minutiae, which are specific points on a print. There are two main minutiae. The first one is ridge endings, which is where a ridge on your finger ends. And the second is a bifurcation, which is where a ridge splits into two separate ridges. The amount and location of these minutiae are unique to each person, and computers can compare their location on your fingers to any other print in the system, giving a completely unique identification to you. Now let's get back to the girls and see their progress on the left hand. Oops, it looks like we made a small mistake here. This is where retabs come into play. Retabs are small squares of white paper that you can relay over your card so you can retake the print. They're there to use in case you make any mistakes, so don't be afraid to use them. However, if you use more than two, there is the possibility that your card will be rejected, so be careful. The last part of fingerprinting is the plain impressions. These are most likely the impressions that you're used to seeing. You simply lay your finger flat down on the card. But once again, always start with the right hand and the right thumb. Simply ink the thumb and place it down the card. However, for the fingers, make sure that you lay all four fingers at the same time. For most adult males, you might have to turn the fingers slightly when placing them on the card so they fit fully inside the square. And that's it. You've completed your first official fingerprint card. Congratulations. If you have any questions, email us at the website or give us a call.
Okay, any questions on that first video? I think you could see some of the things that Kerry talked about with the tips from the tip sheet and stuff. So we'll go ahead and watch the second video. Now, Kerry, do you want to preface this one a little bit? Because they do talk about, so again, we're watching the process. That's what we're focusing on. But this video is, I think.
Yeah, so yeah, just focus on how she, in this one, she doesn't use a card holder, which is actually the way that I prefer to roll fingerprints, is not using a card holder. I just found it to be not, I don't know, I just didn't find it as helpful. But so she'll talk through kind of how to have the paper or the card over the edge, a straight edge of a table. And the other piece she does, so in this particular video, the very beginning, she references fingerprinting people for during autopsies and dead people. And that's obviously not what we're doing here, but that's just part of what this video was originally. It was made for a variety of people doing fingerprints. So just take a deep breath and move on. It's okay.
Yeah. And one more thing I forgot to add on that first video, that card, those tabs, those are things, I don't know if any of the consultants have ever used, but you can purchase those. But I think most of our CCR&R staff have never used those. So I just wanted to preface that we don't have a lot of experience with them. Those are things that you can order, but those would be a separate thing. And again, I don't think we've used that much. If anybody wants to chime in with that, you're welcome to.
And he pointed out in the video that if you use them, it might cause your card to be rejected if you use more than one. Just a note.
Yes,
It's
and it looks
almost
like,
better to do a whole new card.
yeah, it looks like Sherry did say that she's found even if one sticker, sometimes that maybe that's been more to happen that they're rejected. So again, maybe our suggestion is just to start another card. Okay, so good thoughts, good points. We'll go ahead and watch the second video.
For today's activity, I'm going to be teaching you how to fingerprint someone. Brandon is going to be helping us out. I'm going to be placing his inked fingerprints on a 10 print card. So it's easiest if we actually take the card and move it to the edge of the table. You can see there's a line under where it has labeled for the right hand. And if you can just do a crease on that line, it's a lot easier to fingerprint that way. So what I'm going to do is have Brandon give me his right hand. We start with his right thumb. I'm going to ink his right thumb. Now, when you ink the person's fingers, what we want to do, we don't want to get too much ink. You want to get just the right amount. And you want to make sure that your ink covers not just the center, but the entire side, because we're not just going to be pushing the print straight down. At first, we're going to be rolling it so we get more detail. So I'm just going to gently roll Brandon's finger, gentle pressure. And if your card comes up a little bit, that's okay. A lot of times when you're fingerprinting in the jail, they have a nice black box you can lock the card into. But we just have it on the edge of the table, so if it moves, that's fine. Again, ink all the way around. And we're just going to slowly and gently roll. You might not always just be printing someone who's living. You might be printing someone at an autopsy. I actually find it easier to fingerprint people at autopsies because a lot of times living people will try to help you out a little too much. And if you apply too much pressure, your print might be smudged. Remember, when we're looking at fingerprints, and we'll be looking at those at a different time, we're looking at very small details in the print. So we want just the right amount of pressure so we can see those details clearly. On your 10 print card, the spaces for the fingers are actually numbered, and your right thumb is number 1. It goes to number 5, which would be your right pinky. We then go to number 6, which would be your left thumb. So we're going to move on to fingerprint his left hand now. I'm going to do that same crease just because it's easier for me with the card on the edge of the table. So we have Brandon's left thumb, and we're going to apply some ink. And then again, gentle pressure and rolling to get the sides and center. You look at the bottom of your 10 print card, you can see there's some larger spaces. The space on the bottom right is actually for your left 4 fingers, the left thumb, right thumb, and the right 4 fingers. And unlike the top one where we rolled, I'm going to ink Brandon's fingers. I want a little bit more ink, not just the tips, but some down at the bottom, and we're going to go straight down. So I take his right 4 fingers. And again, I want ink not just on the tips of the finger this time, but more on the finger itself. And again, a little bit more ink. And you can see we have moved further down on the fingers this time. And again, we're just going to go straight down, and I am going to apply some gentle pressure. Move it straight up, and again with the thumb, not just on the tip, but a little more down. And we switch to the left hand. And you can see this is our completed 10 print card.
So any questions on that video or anything that she might have shared? Okay. You can kind of see, you see the, I really noticed the print looking more like a box, like a square on that second video too. She did use a smaller ink pad than maybe what we gave you. And like Kerry shared, you know, you've got to find your comfort in this, kind of your own rhythm. And I would say all the consultants that are doing it or have been doing it have really found success with it as they continue to do it. So it's a learning process. They weren't as comfortable at the beginning and then they became more. So Becky's going to kind of share, kind of get us started to get going in practice. She can maybe talk about what to get out. So we're going to practice. We're going to go ahead and show that first video again and just kind of have you practice. So I'm going to have her just kind of start that, walk us through if there's anything she wants us to get ready to help you prepare. And then we'll just do a little practice real quick with that first video again.
Well, depending on the surface that you're using, you'll want to make sure that your fingerprint pad and your fingerprint card holder are stable. So that's why we put the shelf liner that doesn't slide. So you'll want to put that and it's easiest if you can put it close to the edge of the table so that you have room to manipulate the hand. And the other thing, if you noticed in the first video where the fingerprints were kind of triangle shaped instead of square, that's because her table was too low and instead of countertop height. So you want to make sure that when you do the finger on it, that your finger is flat and not angled up. That'll give you a better print. So once you have your fingerprint pad and your card holder out on a non-slip surface, close to the edge of the table, we'll just kind of follow the first video and you can roll right along with the girls in the girl in her white coat as she rolls fingerprints. And then just, if you can keep pace with her as she's rolling those prints. And the thing to remember is thumbs roll towards the body. And when you're rolling fingers, you want to roll them away from the body. So my right hand rolls to the right, my left hand rolls to the left, except for the thumbs. Those are just the opposite. Does that make sense?
And the video might go a little fast, but you just keep up as best as you can. Some of it is just maybe even feeling how it feels, you know, the back and forth. And so we'll go ahead and
practice.
Just practice. Fast forward just a little bit.
Station. Separate cards of the first row of boxes are available. These boxes should be for the right hand. When fingerprinting, always begin with the right hand, starting with the thumb. It's important to remember that the subject doesn't help at all, and the practitioner moves the subject's hands for them to ensure even prints. When printing, thumbs always roll towards the body from the point of most to least resistance. This is repeated on the card. When rolling fingers, however, roll them away from the body, exactly opposite of the thumbs. The practitioner must take the prints carefully for each finger. The utmost detail must be able to be seen for the optimum identification. Try to get the least amount of smudges by moving at a steady pace with an even amount of pressure. Make sure that between hands, the subject has time to clean their fingers. This keeps the workplace as well as the subject clean. Now, while these two move on to the left hand, I'm going to take some time to explain the little details of fingerprinting to you. As I said earlier,
I'm going to go through just a little faster and get to that. There we go.
Oops, it looks like we made a small mistake here. This is where retabs come into play. Retabs are small squares of white paper that you can relay over your card so you can retake the print. They're there to use in case you make any mistakes, so don't be afraid to use them. However, if you use more than 2, there is the possibility that your card will be rejected, so be careful. The last part of fingerprinting is the plain impressions. These are most likely the impressions that you're used to seeing. You simply lay your finger flat down on the card. But once again, always start with the right hand and the right thumb. Simply ink the thumb and place it on the card. However, for the fingers, make sure that you lay all 4 fingers at the same time. For most adult males, you might have to turn the fingers slightly when you place them on the card so they fit fully inside the square.
If you notice on her print,
And that's it. You've completed your first official fingerprint card.
Go ahead, Becky, you can
that
share.
little finger barely made it on there. So even not just on men's hands and the size of their hands, you want to look at the difference in height between the ring finger and the little finger. And you may have to turn it sideways just to get that little finger on there.
Okay.
I just always turn them sideways to make sure we don't miss a little finger.
Mhm. So that's another great tip. Turn it sideways. Okay. Anything else from any other consultants? We'll give you a little time to maybe clean off your hands. If not, I know some of our consultants we purchased some of the things from some of these companies, wipes or things that have been really helpful. I'm not saying you have to, but they might have some tips. I know, Sherry, it looks like you said tuck the person's ink fingers so they do not smudge the rest of the card. So it is important if you're not wiping in between, you just be thoughtful of that because it definitely can. So that whole environment, just to be thoughtful of that. I'm going to jump back. There is a question about the digital prints. So yes, here's the thing. I know we've been in contact. We've asked DHS about that option in the future, whatnot. I know they're looking into it. As far as what police are using right now, I could confirm with DHS, but I think what Becky was saying is, yes, some people might be using that, the police stations and stuff, and it seems, I thought that it would count, but again, I don't know for sure. So I can get that question answered from DHS and send that response back to you guys, okay? But I know we've kind of asked about that. But it looks like, Becky, are you saying that maybe they still use digital prints, but they maybe are still printing on the cards for maybe childcare or?
They do digital prints, but they print it out. They don't send the copy.
They print it out on the card.
Electronically.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So your digital print is
printed on the card, actually printed
Right.
on the card. Okay.
right. They just print them out after they take your digital prints because they can't file them electronically, as
Okay.
far as I know. So you've
Okay.
got to have a paper copy.
Okay. So is that kind of what, Jamie, you were asking? I'll check into it more and get a response. I know DHS though that's on their radar and they're having conversations. I just think the COVID thing has probably put just a little damper into all of that too. So, but great question. So I'll follow up on that. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I'm just looking to see if you do jump in or any other consultant. We'll move on. I'm going to have Terry or another one of CCR&R's consultants share just some things around DHS. And I think you all know this, but we want to make sure.
Yeah, this was pretty exciting news. Back on October 13th, about a month ago, you should have gotten a letter from DHS that looks like this. And they had announced, and we were very excited to hear that DHS will be paying directly to DCI the record checks as of November 1st. So this information should have been sent to you. Just as you've been sending any record checks in for fingerprinting for any employees or volunteers, DHS would be paying for those as you send them in. So One thing that I wanted to clarify too is they are not going to go back and reimburse for any past checks that were paid out. I'm thinking that maybe some of those people that have not had their fingerprints completed because they were not able to get to the police department and need to submit them should be able to submit them as long as they were hired on or after March 16th and should be able to submit those to DHS. Programs, of course, are still responsible for the cost of the SING checks, but the actual fingerprinting cost through DCI will not be charged to you anymore. And then, of course, DHS has always said that you were responsible for rolling the fingerprints and any costs. So we're hoping today in having this opportunity to kind of discuss this and learn more about it, that you can roll your own prints. And this payment support, in our understanding, is not just covered now during COVID time, but will continue moving forward. So that's really good to hear that this is going to be done. Looks like we had one person say they completed several fingerprint checks a few weeks ago. Is there a way to be reimbursed? Not to my knowledge. It's my understanding that if you've already paid DHS, then, well, actually, if you have done it, let's check on that.
Yeah, I can check on that. You're saying it was after the date, but you already paid for it possibly?
That's what it looks like.
Okay.
Susan, let's check on that for you. If you submitted this after November 1st and sent a check, they should hopefully be reimbursing you. Do we still use the same form to submit the forms, just not include any information? My understanding is you do not need to submit that record check billing form anymore. That will not be required because of that. Susan said it's before October 13th, and no, I believe that they will not reimburse you for anything before November 1st, is my understanding.
But we'll double check. Yeah, we can double check.
Any other questions on that?
We hope that you guys do see that, as we've heard from directors with so many staff at different times. You hire a staff and then they just don't show up or they don't work out and you're out that money. So we do really hope that this is another thing to continue to break down some of the barriers that you guys find as challenges for things that are costing for your program. So.
Okay, so the next piece that we included in your packet that was sent out, and this is also located on the CCR&R website, is an FAQ on the record check guide. So this is a good guide to make sure to have handy whenever you got new employees that are being hired, because it reviews who needs the record checks, including any volunteers. It has that language to kind of help you figure out whether or not that substitute or volunteer needs to have that record check done. And then how often they need to be done. And I know sometimes that time period seems to roll by pretty quickly, but those Iowa record checks, the SING checks, which you still have to pay for, is every 2 years. And then the fingerprinting is something that's done every 4 years. And then at the very bottom is that little blurb on when staff can be working with children directly once they are hired, is just those nice checks of making sure the fingerprints are in the mail and the SING checks have been run. So once those pieces are done, then that new staff can be working with children. As you kind of keep scrolling through this handout, which is a nice piece, it does talk about how to complete the SING checks on the second page. The third page has more information about the fingerprint checks themselves. So not only do you fill out the fingerprint card, but don't forget that DCI 45 waiver agreement, which needs to be completed by the staff member. And then just remember, if you need more fingerprint cards, to use that DCI accounts at dps.state.ia.us email to make sure to request those fingerprint cards. You must have those cards from DHS or from DCI directly to utilize for fingerprint rolling. And then the middle of the page is where you send those fingerprint cards to. And again, you shouldn't need that billing form anymore because you do not need to pay for those. And then just the next few pages, I'm not going to review them, but just sometimes there might be what they call a hit or there might be some more information that's required because of fingerprint or a SING. And that just kind of gives you some information of what to do and some next steps. So those are some good things to kind of review if you get any information back from DHS or DCI and what information is needed. So any questions on any of that?
Okay.
No?
Doesn't look like, yeah, and I think the big thing, if I did have a couple of questions, where do we get it? So on that page, I think it's page 3 that Emily scrolled through, it does give that website. So, but again, as you're going through this, if you have any questions, reach out to your local consultant. We'll walk you through as best as we know. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find out the answer and try to get the information to you for what we know now, for our understanding. And the way DHS is doing it right now. So we wanted to make sure you guys are aware of that. I think that's a big deal, and those resources. So the last couple things, and again, feel free to jump in about any other questions. Again, we're not promoting one agent or one company or not, but we have just used these couple sites to get our fingerprint resources that we printed for childcare programs. So that's why there's on there. There's a couple different things that people have used. There's kits, there might be like the platform or the bar, like Shannon, we showed that picture. Those are more expensive. And like Kerry said, you might not need all that. So we've got you some basic stuff to get started. You might have multiple programs, or you might want to do it different ways. But anyway, here's some resources. What we ordered you, we actually ordered off of Amazon. From these companies, but we ordered in bulk, so that's why we got it from there. So that's there for you. Any questions though, or thoughts? This is a great time to, or something maybe you just didn't understand or you want to clarify, or needs, any needs that you see coming from this. I guess I would say is our goal, honestly, as CCR&R right now, we're not doing the service. We're not sure when we can continue or how or in the future. So we think it definitely would be a good thing for programs to look into. And the programs that are doing it have been really successful. And I think they found a lot of benefit in it. So yes, it's one more thing that you have to learn or do. But when you look at some of the cost saving time and that kind of stuff, it really has been beneficial. So we know before it was really hard to get prints. Obviously right now with COVID, it still is, but even before. So we're hoping that this might be a possible solution to help support centers for sure. So think on it, try it.
There is a question. On the page that has where to order the fingerprint cards, it says to include your OCA, and they're asking what that is, and I'm not sure either. Do you know what that is?
Emily, maybe can we pull that screen back up? It was just that last handout that you had up. Let's pull that up and see. If not, if we can't figure it out, does anybody else know what that OCA means? We can find out, but I'm not sure offhand.
Each person or agency is assigned a number when they initially apply to be able to do fingerprints and SING. And that number is reflective of that agency. So like I could give you my number for the Dubuque Y, but that wouldn't do you any good.
Mm-hmm. I think page 2, Emily, I think, or 3, page 3, maybe right there, I think. Is that where we are looking? Is that?
Yeah, order by mail.
They should be able to give you that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I'm not sure what it stands for.
Yeah, but that makes sense. I'm not sure who shared that. Thank you. But yeah, if you guys have questions, I would start with that and just ask. But if you're not getting the answers you need, just reach out to your consultant. We can help facilitate that. But that sounds like each one's assigned that. Yeah. Good question. Okay, somebody said too, yeah, it's connected to your DCI account. Okay. And on the fingerprint card, you need to write in the OCA as well. And that's what I wondered too with some of you, if you guys order them, if that if you get them from DHS, if that number comes on there, but it sounds like maybe you just need to write that on there. So good things to think about. Okay, good points.
Sarah,
Any-
I think for home childcare providers, DHS uses a single OCA number for all home childcare providers, but each center is assigned a number.
That sounds right.
We've seen it on the cards, but that's why there's a difference between center and home cards. But I
Okay.
don't know what OCA stands for.
Yep. I would definitely email that and ask if you have questions. So good thoughts, good question. Any other questions or things that maybe we didn't cover that you were hoping we would, or any of the tips or anything? Okay, I'm not seeing too many more. Let's just see if there's anything else. If not, we will record this. Like we said, we'll send out the link for you guys to utilize. We'll have it saved too. So in the future, if for some reason you lose it, contact your consultant, we'll get it back for you. I think, again, some of the videos were listed in the handouts that we sent. So, but you might search some other ones, Google them up, and you might find one that works better for you. Or reach out to maybe a sheriff or police that maybe is a parent or somebody that maybe can give you even more of some tips and skills. So watch for that. That will come out. And lastly, if there's not any more questions, we just want to thank you guys as directors, childcare staff that are on here, again, for all that you're doing for children and family every day. I know how hard it's getting this past week and might continue. So you guys are our heroes, and we just want to support you and continue to be there for you as things change and need. So appreciate your time today, taking the time to have this conversation. If anybody has any questions, we can stay on. A few of us, I can stay on for a little bit, feel free, but we'll go ahead and end this meeting today. And thank you again for your time. And stay safe. And Emily, we could probably go ahead and just stop the recording too. It would be fine.